I have replaced 2 water heaters, 1 roof, 3 car engines, and an entire kitchen floor in my lifetime. I did not expect my hip to be next. The surgeon, a young man named Dr. Leonard, who looked to be in his early 40s and spoke with the quiet confidence of someone who had done this procedure 800 times, told me that a hip replacement at 78 was, in his words, very routine. He said it the way people say minor surgery when it isn't their body on the table. I nodded politely. I have been nodding politely at people for 78 years. It is perhaps my greatest skill, and it has never once served me well. Welcome to Dad's Raw Revenge. Get settled because this one is going to take you somewhere. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. Trust me, you're going to love it here. My name is Albert Walker. I am 78 years old. I have been an engineer for 40 years. I know exactly how much weight a structure can bear before something gives. I just never thought I'd have to apply that math to my own children. I told my 3 children 6 weeks before the surgery date. 6 weeks. I want you to hold that number in your mind. Not 6 hours, not 6 days, 6 full weeks, 42 days, during which any one of them could have circled a date on a calendar, arranged a babysitter, requested a half day from work, or simply driven down I-65 to Bowling Green, Kentucky, to sit with their father before he went under general anesthesia at age 78. I am going to tell you what each of them did with those 42 days. Raymond, my oldest, he's 49, called me on a Tuesday evening in September. I could hear the television in the background, some kind of sports program, and the particular quality of his attention that told me he was also scrolling his phone. He said, "Dad, don't worry. We'll all be there." Then he asked, with what I can only describe as admirable efficiency, whether I had spoken to anyone recently about the property value on Sycamore Lane. Just out of curiosity, just making conversation. Bella, my second child, sent me a voice message. 4 minutes and 22 seconds. I know the exact duration because I listened to it 3 times, not because it was moving, but because I kept waiting for her to say something that resembled a concrete plan. She was so sorry about the timing. Work had become absolutely impossible. Her husband David had a work thing. The kids had school thing. She would absolutely, certainly, definitely figure it out and be there. She used the phrase, "Of course, Dad," 4 times in 4 minutes, which works out to roughly 1 of course per minute, which is, I think, a personal record for sincerity without substance. And then there was Nora. Nora called me on a Wednesday afternoon, 3 weeks before my surgery. I was in the kitchen making a sandwich, and I felt a small warmth when I saw her name on the screen. The way you feel the warmth at the sight of something you love, even when it has disappointed you more times than you can count. I answered on the second ring. She asked how I was feeling about the surgery. I said I was nervous, but ready. She said that was good. Then she paused. A very particular kind of pause that I have known since she was 19 years old. And she said she was actually in a bit of a situation. Her rent was short this month. Could I help her out? She is 30 years old. I said, "Yes, of course, because I'm her father." And I have always said, "Yes." I transferred the money from my phone while she was still on the call. She said, "Thanks, Dad, feel better," and hung up. She did not come to the surgery. She did not call during the surgery. She did not, to the best of my knowledge, think about the surgery at all after she received the money. I want to pause here and tell you something about the morning of my operation, because it is important, and I have not told anyone. I woke up at 5:15 a.m. in my house on Sycamore Lane. The house was quiet in that particular way that large houses are quiet when only one person lives in them. Not peaceful exactly, but the kind of quiet that has a shape to it, a weight. I made coffee I wouldn't be allowed to drink. I sat in my chair by the window. The sun was coming up over the tree line, painting everything in that thin Kentucky gold that you only get in October. And I sat there and I thought, if something goes wrong today, The last conversation I had with my youngest child was her asking me for rent money. I thought about that for a while. Then I ordered a ride to the hospital. I checked myself in and handed my phone to a nurse named Gloria to hold during the procedure. They kept me for 13 days. Hip replacement recovery is no small thing, regardless of what doctor. Leonard and his endless calm would have you believe. There is pain that introduces itself to you in the night. Like an unwelcome house guest, there is the indignity of a walker, of a bedpan, of needing assistance to do things that you have done alone since you were 2 years old. There is a specific kind of loneliness that only exists in hospital rooms. Not the loneliness of solitude, which I have made my peace with, but the loneliness of being surrounded by beeping machines and fluorescent light, and the distant sounds of other people's families, and having no one in the chair beside your bed. That chair, I looked at it every day. It was blue, vinyl, slightly crooked on its left leg so that it tilted just barely to one side. I memorized that chair the way you memorize a scar. Raymond called on day 2 and day 5. Day 2, he asked how I was feeling. Day 5, he asked whether I had a filing system for my financial documents because it might be good to get organized. Dad, at some point. No rush. I told him my documents were perfectly organized. I have been an engineer for 40 years. Every document I have ever owned is labeled, dated, and filed in a cabinet in my study. Bella called every day from day 1 through day 6, which sounds devoted until you understand that each call lasted approximately 4 minutes, and consisted almost entirely of reasons she had not yet come, and promises about when she would. The reasons were creative. I will give her that. Traffic. A stomach bug that turned out not to be a stomach bug. A school play that turned out to be a rehearsal. Not the actual play. A work deadline that shifted. So many excuses. On day 7, she called and said she was definitely coming on day 9. On day 9, she did not come. She sent a text that said, "Dad, I'm so sorry. Something came up. I'll explain everything. Love you." I read that text. I set my phone down on the blue bedside table. I looked at the blue vinyl chair, and I felt something shift inside me. Not dramatically, not with tears or rage or any of the emotions you might expect, but quietly, the way a foundation shifts, slow and certain and permanent. Nora did not call once after the money was transferred. On day 7, Gloria, a nurse in her mid-50s, with the efficient warmth of someone who has seen every version of human nature this world produces, came in to check my vitals and found me reading a book. She glanced at the empty chair. She looked at me. She said very gently, "Do you have family, Mr. Walker?" I said. "Yes," I smiled when I said it. She nodded slowly, the way people nod when they understand something you haven't said, and finished checking my blood pressure. Before she left, she squeezed my hand once, just once, and said, "You press that call button anytime, okay?" I've thought about that hand squeeze every day since. On day 13, Dr. Leonard signed my discharge papers, pronounced my recovery excellent, and shook my hand. A volunteer wheeled me to the exit in a mandatory wheelchair. Hospital policy, they said, which I found both touching and absurd. I called an Uber from the curb. The driver was a young man named Tyler who asked if I'd had a good stay. I told him it was a hospital. He laughed. We drove the 20 minutes to Sycamore Lane in comfortable silence, which is the best kind of silence, the kind you choose. He helped me to my front door with my bag. I thanked him. He nodded once, the way young men nod when they don't quite know what they're looking at but sense it's something, and he walked back to his car. I stood at my own front door for a moment before going in. I don't know exactly why. My hip was aching. I had a walker and a discharge sheet and a small bag of medications in a white paper pharmacy bag. There was no logical reason to stand on my own porch like a man waiting to be let in, but I stood there, just for a moment, looking at the door I had hung myself in 1989. The brass handle I had replaced twice. The small crack in the upper left panel that I kept meaning to fill and never did. I went inside. The house was exactly as I had left it 13 days ago. That sounds like a simple thing. It is not a simple thing. When you live alone and you leave for 13 days and you come back and the house is exactly as you left it, it means no one came. Not to water the plant on the kitchen windowsill, not to check the mail stacking up in the box by the door, or simply be present in the space where you live. No one came. I set my bag down. I moved slowly through the kitchen, the way you move when your body has been through something and is still negotiating the terms of recovery. I filled the kettle. I set it on the stove. I stood at the kitchen window and looked out at the backyard, the rose bushes along the south fence, the oak tree, the wooden bench I built 20 years ago. That has survived every Kentucky winter since. Everything exactly as I left it. I thought about the blue vinyl chair in room 114, the way it sat empty day after day, tilted slightly on its left leg, waiting for someone who never came. I thought about Gloria asking if I had family and the smile that cost me something I still haven't fully named. I thought about Nora's voice on the phone. "Thanks, Dad. Feel better," and the specific silence that followed. I thought about what it means to love people. I love my children the way I built things, carefully, with the right materials, with attention to what would last, not because someone was watching, not because there was something in it for you, because love is not a transaction. It is not a performance you give when the stakes are high enough. I made my tea. I carried it carefully to my chair by the window. The chair I have sat in for 30 years. The one with the worn armrest on the right side where my elbow always rests. I sat down. The afternoon light was coming through the window at a low angle, the way it does in October, thin and golden and slightly melancholy. I sat there for a while. Just sat. The house was quiet around me. Not the peaceful quiet of a Sunday morning or the comfortable quiet of a man who enjoys his own company. The other quiet, the kind with a shape to it. I had 13 days to understand certain things about my life. I finished my tea, I set the cup down on the side table, and then I picked up the phone, not to call Raymond, not Bella, not Nora. I called Michael Simmons, my attorney of 26 years. It was time to do a little engineering. If you have been listening for a while, do us one quick favor. Subscribe. A lot of people watch without ever doing it, but it costs you nothing, and it means everything to us. Hit the like button while you're at it and drop your thoughts in the comments. Let me tell you something about engineers. We do not react, we respond. There is a difference, and that difference is everything. Reaction is a knee-jerk, a slammed door, a shouted thing you cannot take back. Response is measured, calculated. You assess the load. You determine the appropriate structural solution. You build accordingly. Michael Simmons has been my attorney for 26 years. He is a patient man. Gerald, patient and precise. Two qualities I respect enormously, having spent my career as an engineer surrounded by people who were neither. When I called him from my kitchen on that October evening, still moving carefully with my walker, still tender in ways I will not describe. He listened without interrupting for 11 minutes while I told him what I needed. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Albert, are you certain?" I told him I had been certain since day 7. He said he would draw up the documents. I thanked him, hung up, and drank my tea. Outside the window, the Kentucky sky was going dark over the tree line, and the neighborhood was settling into its evening sounds. A lawnmower 2 streets over. Someone's dog, the distant horn of a freight train passing through. Ordinary sounds, the sounds of a life that continued whether anyone showed up for it or not. 6 weeks after my discharge, I called all 3 of my children and invited them to dinner. I want to be precise about my intentions that evening, because I think precision matters. I was not performing weakness. I was not laying a trap. Exactly. I was doing something more elemental than either of those things. I was simply allowing them to show me who they were, and then I was going to remember it. I made the cornbread from scratch, the way their mother used to. I will not say more about that than this. Some recipes are memories, and I was generous enough to share mine. I set the table with the good placemats. I put on Coltrane low on the stereo. I was, by every visible measure, a warm 78-year-old man who was simply glad his family had come. Raymond arrived first. He always arrives first, because Raymond understands that arriving first is itself a statement of reliability, of devotion, of being the responsible one. He came through the door with a bottle of red wine I suspect cost $40, and the specific energy of a man who has rehearsed his entrance. He hugged me. He held it a beat longer than usual. Then his eyes moved across the living room, the crown molding, the fireplace, the built-in shelves I installed myself in 1987 into the kitchen, the renovated countertops, the appliances, back to the living room, a quick professional assessment disguised as a warm smile. "The place looks great. Dad," he said. "It's the same as it's always been," I said. "I know. It looks great." Bella is essentially on time. She came in breathless, a store-bought peach cobbler in her hands, the gesture of a woman who knows she owes more than a cobbler, but hopes a cobbler will do. She hugged me for a long time. I could feel her relief at finding me upright and functional. Then she sat down, and with the careful architecture of someone who has been rehearsing for 6 weeks, she began to explain the hospital. I will not recount it in full because it does not deserve the dignity of full recounting. There were references to a stomach bug, to David's work schedule, children's school calendars, to a plumbing issue that I am confident did not exist. She used the phrase, "I felt terrible about it," 3 times, which is always interesting because people who feel terrible about things usually move heaven and earth not to do those things. I listened to every single word with the patience of a man who has spent 40 years reading engineering reports, which is to say, I absorbed the information without reacting to it, filed it accurately, and drew my own conclusions in private. I told her I understood completely. She exhaled. I passed the cornbread. Nora arrived last, 38 minutes after the stated dinner time, wearing the expression she has worn since adolescence, a kind of preemptive boredom, as though life is a waiting room and she is always hoping for somewhere better to be. She kissed me on the cheek. She sat down. She did not mention the hospital. She did not mention the money. She picked up her fork and asked what was in the pot. She checked her phone twice before the meal was half over. I watched all 3 of them. The way Raymond kept glancing at the bookshelves. The way Bella laughed a little too readily at everything I said. The way Nora ate with the specific contentment of someone who has no idea they are auditioning for something. Then I set down my fork. "I've been meaning to mention something," I said, "since the surgery." It got me thinking. The table adjusted, subtle, a shift in posture, a slight focusing of attention. But I am an engineer. I notice load-bearing changes. At 78, I said, "It doesn't hurt to get your affairs in order." I've been working with Michael on some things, just making sure everything is where it needs to be when the time comes. Then Raymond said, very carefully, "That sounds very sensible." "Dad," Bella said. "Of course. That's so responsible." I picked up my fork and said, "More cornbread?" What happened next unfolded over the following months, with the slow inevitability of something you have engineered properly. Raymond began calling every Sunday at 10 a.m., not 10:15, not 9:50, 10 precise as a measurement. He asked about my health, my appetite, my sleep, my knee, my hip. "Raymond, I had hip surgery." And after 15 minutes of devoted son performance, he would find a way to mention, very naturally, some question about the house. Had I thought about a reverse mortgage? Had I spoken to a financial advisor lately? Was I keeping up with the property taxes? Just practical things, just thinking ahead. "Dad." Bella began appearing on Thursdays with groceries. Actual groceries, not gas station flowers and a box of crackers, but real, considered groceries. The brand of coffee I drink, the particular wheat bread. Soup she knew I liked. She was warm and helpful and genuinely pleasant company. And sitting across from her in my kitchen on those Thursday afternoons, I felt something I had not expected to feel. Grief. Not for what was happening now, but for what could have been happening all along. For the version of Bella who might have shown up on day 3 or day 6 or even day 10. Any day. One single day out of 13. And sat in that blue vinyl chair and just been there. That Bella. The one with groceries and genuine attention. She was right here all along. I drank my coffee and talked with her about the grandchildren and her garden. And I was, as always, warm. Nora even texted. Short messages. Grammatically approximate, but messages. Hey Dad, how are you? And cold out there. Stay warm. And once, memorably, a photograph of a sunset with no accompanying text whatsoever, which I think was her version of poetry. I responded to all of them with full sentences and appropriate punctuation because I am 78 and I was raised right. They called. They visited. They performed the devotion they should have offered freely, now offered as an investment. I accepted every visit. I cooked. I laughed. I asked about their lives. I never mentioned the hospital. Not once. Not a single reference. Not a sideways comment. Not even the careful silence that signals unsaid things. I gave them nothing to defend against, nothing to apologize for, nothing to negotiate with. The hospital had happened. I had processed it alone, the way I have processed most things in my life. I did not need them to apologize. I needed them to understand. And understanding, in my experience, is best achieved not through conversation, but through consequence. The consequence was already written. Michael had the papers. Thursday in March, 5 months since the surgery, and I am sitting on my front porch on Sycamore Lane with a cup of coffee and the specific satisfaction of a man who has his affairs very much in order. The Kentucky morning is doing what Kentucky mornings do in March. Arguing with itself about whether it's still winter. The dogwood in the front yard is considering blooming. The Hargrove boy 2 houses down is attempting, unsuccessfully, to start a lawnmower. A cardinal sits on my porch railing for 11 seconds, regards me with the frank indifference of a creature that owes no anything, and departs. I think about that cardinal more than is probably rational. My hip feels good. Better than good. Doctor. Leonard did fine work. I walk 2 miles every morning now, which is more than I walked before the surgery, which perhaps means the whole ordeal has done me some mechanical good, even if it confirmed certain structural weaknesses elsewhere. I have always been better at noticing structural weaknesses than most people. It is the engineering background. I made a donation last month to the Hospital Foundation, a specific fund for patient comfort and care, the kind of fund that buys warm blankets and better chairs for rooms where people wait alone. I made it in the name of Gloria, the nurse who squeezed my hand. I did not tell anyone. I did not need to. There were 3 charities in my will now where 3 children's names used to be. The first is a veterans organization out of Louisville. Men and women who held things together when no one came for them, either. The second is an engineering scholarship at Western Kentucky University, because I believe in building things that last. And a young mind with the right tools is the most durable structure I know how to fund. The third is a children's hospital fund, which I chose because children did not choose to be in hospital beds. My house on Sycamore Lane, 4 bedrooms, original hardwood, crown molding I installed myself in 1987. The rose bushes along the fence that have been blooming since 1995 goes with the estate to be liquidated for those same charities. Michael knows. Michael has known since October. Michael is a patient and precise man, and he will handle everything exactly as I have specified. There is one additional document in the file, a letter, 1 page written by hand in my drafting print. The small, clean lettering of a man who spent 4 decades making sure his measurements were readable. It is addressed to Raymond, Bella, and Nora, to be opened after I will tell you what it says. It says this: by the time you read this, you will have questions. I want to answer the one that matters most because I was an engineer for 40 years, and I believe in accurate information. I was in the hospital for 13 days following my hip replacement surgery. The surgery was on October 4th. I was discharged on October 17th. I came home in a car I ordered from my phone. I told you the date 6 weeks in advance. I want to be precise about that. 6 weeks. I don't write this with anger. I write it because I believe you deserve to know the exact load-bearing reason for every decision in this document. In engineering, we call it transparency. In a family, I suppose it goes by other names. The house was built well. I maintained it carefully. I hope the charities find it useful. I love you. That part never changed. Albert Walker. Bella arrives at 11 with coffee cake and the specific brightness of a woman who has decided this will be a good visit. She is wearing the yellow jacket she knows I like. She comes through the gate calling Dad, even though she can see me plainly on the porch, which is a habit she has had since she was 7 years old, and which I have always found privately endearing. She sits in the other porch chair. We talk about her daughter's science project and the price of groceries, and whether I think it will be warm enough to plant anything soon. She is good company. She always was. When she came, I look at her over the rim of my coffee cup. She is 30 years old. My Bella. She has her mother's hands. She laughs at the right moments and asks real questions. And she is sitting here in the March light in her yellow jacket, genuinely lovable. I love her. That is not complicated. You can love someone and still change your will. You can love someone and still let consequences be consequences. You can love someone completely and honestly, and still refuse to pretend that 13 days of empty chairs was something other than what it was. She doesn't know. She has no idea. She thinks she is here drinking coffee with a grateful father whose esteem she has rebuilt, whose estate she is slowly, carefully, warmly inheriting. She thinks the Thursday groceries and the Sunday calls and the yellow jacket have been working, and in the ways that matter, the human ways, the father ways, they have. They gave me back a version of my children I had stopped believing existed. I am grateful for that. The paperwork just doesn't know about the yellow jacket. Raymond calls at 10 o'clock on Sunday, as scheduled. We talk for 18 minutes. He asks about my sleep. Good. My knee, hip. Raymond. My appetite. Excellent. I made pot roast again. And then, right on cue, as reliable as a load calculation, he mentions that a house 2 streets over just sold for considerably more than expected. Just interesting, he says. Just something he noticed. Just thinking about the market. Dad. I say. Anyway, he says, I just want you to know we're all here for you. Whatever you need. I look out my window at the dogwood, which has made its decision and is beginning to bloom. Right on schedule, whether anyone asked it to or not. I know you are. Raymond, I say. I know. Nora calls on a Tuesday. This is unprecedented. She calls and she asks, without preamble, whether I want to get lunch sometime. Just the 2 of us. She says she's been thinking about things. She says, and this lands differently than anything else has landed. She says, I feel like I don't know you that well. Dad? Is that a weird thing to say? I sit very still for a moment. It is, in fact, not a weird thing to say. It is the truest thing she has said to me in recent memory. It is also, I note with the detached clarity of a man who has already filed his paperwork approximately 5 months too late. But I am her father, and I am 78, and the dogwood is blooming. It's not a weird thing to say. I tell her, I like that very much. We went for dinner the following Saturday. She orders pancakes. I order eggs. We talked for 2 hours in a way we have never quite talked before. Not about money, not about inheritance, not about the careful performance of family duty. Just talking. She tells me about a man she's been seeing, which is new. She tells me she's been thinking about changing careers, which is also new. She asks me about engineering, what I actually did, what I actually built, in a way that suggests she is genuinely curious and always slightly forgot to ask. I tell her about the bridge project in 1987, the water treatment facility. The time a miscalculation in a stress test cost us 3 weeks, and I had to present the findings to a room full of men who were considerably less gracious about mistakes than I try to be. She listens. She laughs in the right places. She says, "I didn't know any of that." "You didn't ask," I say gently, without accusation, simply accurately. She is quiet for a moment. Then she says, "I'm sorry I didn't come, Dad, to the hospital. I've been trying to figure out how to say that for months." I look at her across the diner table, my child, pancakes going slightly cold, and I feel the full complicated weight of being a parent. The love that doesn't require deserving. The wound that doesn't require drama. The forgiveness that is not the same thing as forgetting. "I know," I say. I do not say it's fine, because it was not fine. I do not say, "Don't worry about it," because she should somewhat worry about it. I do not say, "The will has been changed and none of you are in it anymore." I say I know and I mean it. And I pick up my coffee and we keep talking. It is a Saturday morning now, early April, and I am in my garden on Sycamore Lane. The rose bushes along the south fence are coming back. They come back every year, which is one of the things I love about them. No drama, no announcement, no requiring anyone to notice. They just come back. I planted them the year this house became mine, and they have outlasted more than I expected them to outlast, and they will very likely outlast me, which I find not sad but reasonable. I am 78 years old. I had my hip replaced. I came home in an Uber. I changed my will. I have had pot roast with my children several times since, and they are in the ways that remain available to them good company. They think they are inheriting this house. They are inheriting Saturday mornings if they want them. They are inheriting cornbread and the occasional phone call and a father who, in spite of everything, remains warm. That is what is available. That is what I have to give. The paperwork is in Michael's department. The cardinal is back on the railing. Same one, maybe. Probably not. Either way, he's regarding me with that frank, regal indifference, a creature unburdened by expectation, owing no one a visit, arriving and departing entirely on his own terms. I raise my coffee cup at him. "Morning," I say. He stays for 9 seconds. Then he's gone. I go back to my rose bushes. The thing about engineering, the thing that people who haven't done it often don't understand, is that the most important work is invisible. It's the calculation before the pour, the stress test before the build. The measurement that looks like nothing until the structure stands for 50 years and everyone has forgotten to wonder why. I built my house well. I maintained it carefully. I planned everything, documented everything, filed everything in labeled folders in a cabinet in my study. When the time comes, Michael will open a file, make some calls, and everything will go exactly where I decided it should go. In October, sitting in my kitchen with a cup of tea and a walker, and 13 days of clear information about the people I had raised. In engineering, we call it a sound structure. My children, God love them, will call it something else entirely, but I will not be there to hear it. And somehow, sitting here in the April morning with my coffee and my rose bushes and the ghost of a cardinal on my railing, that is the least troubling thought I have had in a very long time. The will is written. The rose bushes are blooming. Everything is exactly where it needs to be. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comment below. I will see you on the next one.